Elena stepped into the airport quietly, dressed in a soft beige sweater and worn jeans. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, her shoes were flat, and the only accessory she wore was a modest silver ring on her left hand. She carried no designer luggage, no flashy jewelry, and her face held a calm, almost invisible presence. If anyone noticed her at all, they assumed she was just another economy passenger making her way to some quiet corner of the world. She handed her first-class ticket to the gate agent, who raised an eyebrow for half a second before scanning it and nodding her through. Inside the plane, the first-class cabin gleamed with marble-patterned panels, champagne glasses, and elegant, reclining seats. Elena found her seat, 1A, and sat down quietly. She placed her small handbag under the seat, then leaned back, content. Across the aisle, a middle-aged woman in a silk dress and diamond-studded watch narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me," she said to a nearby flight attendant. "I think that woman might be in the wrong seat." The attendant, Rachel, looked up and approached Elena. "Ma'am," she said, keeping her voice low but her tone sharp, "this is the first-class cabin. Can I see your boarding pass?" Elena offered it with a gentle smile. Rachel took one look, frowned, and glanced back at the diamond-clad woman. "I'll need to verify this," she muttered. Elena said nothing. Rachel returned moments later with another attendant and a supervisor. The supervisor, a tall man with a rehearsed smile, crouched beside Elena. "Ma'am, this ticket seems unusual. Are you sure it wasn't issued to someone else? Perhaps your husband or employer?" Elena looked him in the eye. "It was issued to me." "But you don't appear." He caught himself mid-sentence, realizing what was about to come out. He forced a smile. "There must be some mistake. Please follow me to the economy cabin until we clear this up." People in the nearby rows had started to whisper. Elena could hear phrases like "probably snuck in" and "trying her luck." Still, she stood up and followed the man without resistance. No one noticed the way she sighed softly before walking away from her seat. No one imagined they'd regret this moment for the rest of their careers. Elena took her seat near the back of the plane, between a window and a tired-looking man in a rumpled business suit. The cabin here was crowded, filled with crying children, humming air vents, and the quiet groans of passengers settling in for a long flight. No champagne. No glances of admiration. Just reality. The man beside her glanced sideways, noticed her calm expression, and gave a polite nod. "You all right?" he asked after a moment, his voice low and kind. Elena smiled. "Yes. It's just a seat." He chuckled. "Most people would throw a fit if they got kicked out of first class. Especially if they had a real ticket." Elena tilted her head. "And you assume I did?" He shrugged. "You don't look like the kind who lies." She nodded once, then turned to the window. Outside, rain streaked the glass as ground crew hurried beneath the glowing lights. Back in the front, the cabin crew resumed their duties. Rachel passed by seat 1A without a second thought, her voice sweet as sugar with the other passengers, pouring wine and offering blankets. She felt no guilt. In her mind, she had done the right thing. That woman didn't belong up here. She had looked out of place, like someone who didn't understand luxury. First class was for important people. Business leaders, celebrities, politicians. Not women in thrifted sweaters and second-hand shoes. No one told Rachel otherwise. Not yet. Hours passed in the sky. Meal trays came and went. Lights dimmed. Passengers slept. Elena stayed quiet the entire time, her phone turned off, her eyes closed, her heart still. But far across the globe, in a different time zone, someone very important had just landed. His name was Emir Al-Fayed, and he was checking his messages for any updates about the surprise visit he planned for his airline. There was one he hadn't seen yet. A simple message just sent from someone he trusted. Elena was downgraded. Something about a mistake. Cabin crew didn't recognize her. He stared at the screen, unmoving. Then he stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and said just one word to his assistant. "Prepare the car." The plane touched down smoothly on the glowing runway of Dubai International Airport. It was just past midnight, but the terminal pulsed with quiet activity. High-profile executives were expected tonight. Not that the flight crew knew who. As the plane taxied to its gate, Rachel fixed her hair in the reflection of a darkened window and reapplied her lipstick. She knew high-ranking airline officials would be around. Maybe she'd get noticed. Maybe a promotion. Meanwhile, Elena remained seated in economy, calm as ever. The businessman beside her had long fallen asleep, unaware of the storm that was quietly building around them. Once the doors opened, first-class passengers were the first to disembark as always. Rachel smiled brightly, wishing them well as they passed. Then came the rest. Elena stepped into the jet bridge last. Her movements were slow, graceful, without resentment. An airport staff member waited with a clipboard in hand. "Elena Al-Fayed?" he asked, confused to see her emerging from the back. She nodded gently. The man blinked, then quickly adjusted his stance and radioed in something quietly. "Yes, sir. She's here." "But, from economy." Rachel, standing at the aircraft door, froze. "Al-Fayed?" The name rang like a siren in her mind. She turned to the supervisor, who had just received a call on his walkie-talkie. "Rachel," he said, slowly, pale. "We need to talk. Now." Before either of them could move, heavy footsteps echoed from the terminal walkway. A group of security personnel arrived first, followed by a tall, striking man in a charcoal suit, flanked by assistants. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone. Emir Al-Fayed, owner of the airline, billionaire, media ghost, and the husband of the woman who'd just been pushed into coach like an unwanted bag. He didn't say a word at first. Just walked up to Elena, took her hands and kissed her forehead in silence. She looked up at him with the same quiet eyes she'd carried all day. Then, slowly, he turned to face the staff. Rachel's knees weakened under the weight of realization. "I believe," Emir said calmly, voice sharp as glass, "there was a mistake." The supervisor stammered. Sir, we were just following procedure." "You humiliated my wife," Emir interrupted, softly but coldly. "In front of strangers. You questioned her right to a seat she paid for, based on appearance alone." Rachel stepped forward, desperate. "Sir, I didn't know." "No," Emir said, still quiet. "You didn't? And that's exactly the problem." Behind him, his assistant handed him a file. Emir flipped it open and signed something at the bottom. Rachel stared at it. Her name was on the top. Rachel's lips parted as she stared at the paper in Emir's hand. Her name was printed clearly, followed by a single sentence. "Termination effective immediately." Her voice caught in her throat. "Please, sir. I didn't mean to offend her. I was just trying to do my job." Elena finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "You were doing your judgment, not your job." Rachel looked at her, eyes pleading. "I didn't know who you were." "That's the saddest part," Elena replied softly. "You wouldn't have treated me any better even if I were someone else. Not unless I looked like it." Emir folded the letter and handed it to airport security. "Escort her from the premises. Make sure she doesn't return to any of our flights." Rachel's protests echoed down the hall as she was led away, her perfect hair and makeup no longer holding their power. The supervisor beside her stepped back, terrified to say a word. He knew what would come next. "I want full reports on the cabin staff by morning," Emir said. "Everyone involved. Those who stayed silent are no less guilty." His assistants nodded and moved with efficiency. The mood had shifted. The quiet woman from economy was no longer invisible. She was now the center of everything. Elena took her husband's arm, but not to claim power or control. She leaned on him gently, as if nothing had changed at all. "Was that necessary?" she asked. He looked at her. "You were insulted. And now she's unemployed," Elena said. "Let's just go home." He smiled slightly. She always surprised him. Even with the world at her feet, she remained grounded in something deeper. As they exited through a private terminal door, press cameras waited, lights flashing as they caught a glimpse of the elusive Emir Al-Fayed. They gasped when they saw the woman beside him. One reporter shouted, "Is that your wife?" Emir didn't answer. He simply opened the door of a sleek black car and helped Elena inside. The world could draw its own conclusions. Inside the car, Elena looked out the tinted window at the glowing airport. Her reflection stared back, plain, quiet, real. "I liked seat 1A, she said with a faint smile. Emir chuckled. "Next time I'll book you the entire cabin." The next morning, news outlets across the world picked up the story. A simple headline went viral. "Airline staff kicked woman out of first class. Turns out she's the owner's wife." Comment sections exploded. Some defended the crew, saying it was an honest mistake. Others saw what it really was, a quiet reminder that prejudice wears a polished smile. But Elena stayed out of it. No statements, no interviews. While her name trended online, she sat on the terrace of her seaside home, sipping mint tea, watching waves curl across the sand. Amir joined her, fresh from a phone call with the board of directors. They want to make a public apology, he said. Press conference, full coverage. They want to clean this up. Elena stirred her tea. What if we don't? He raised an eyebrow. Let them wonder, she said. Let people think. That's louder than any statement. Amir leaned back and smiled. His wife, the quiet soul the world once overlooked, had just rewritten a page of his empire's history. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need attention. She had something stronger. She had dignity. And now, thousands of staff members across the airline were quietly reevaluating how they treated people. Every person. Not because they might secretly be important, but because they might not be. Elena stood up and walked down toward the beach, sandals in hand, waves brushing her toes. No cameras followed. No headlines captured that moment. But the lesson she left behind echoed in every terminal, every flight, and every seat, especially seat 1A. Moral of the story. Never judge someone by what they wear, how they look, or where they sit. True worth is not always dressed in gold or diamonds. Sometimes it's wrapped in humility, quiet strength, and grace. The way you treat someone when you think they're nobody reveals who you truly are. Because power doesn't always walk loudly. Sometimes, it boards in silence, smiles with kindness, and forgives when it could punish. Treat every human being with respect, not because of who they might be, but because of who you should be.